Everybody knows that full frame is better than micro four thirds in low light. Or do we? We'll get to that. But what about good light? If you got good lighting, is there much of an advantage? We will explore it thoroughly today. Prepare to learn.
All I want is the perfect camera. All I want is the perfect camera.
So we got some interesting things to discuss today. I took the Olympus EM1 III with the tiny little 75 to 300 out with the Sony G Master. This is what we're going to witness today, just some wildlife footage in comparison with these freaks. Are you believing that? Don't look at me, Sony. Look at the lenses. The difference, man. You have any idea how much heft that one has? We're talking about $6,000 American for the Sony A7S III with that G Master, 100 to 400 versus like $2,000 for the Olympus. Are you seeing much of a difference? That's the question, but we'll get to it later. Now, first thing we have to tackle, because I said this lens equivalent to 13.4 Tonys. We had 13 Tonys standing in front of the lens, barely any light got through it. And then the equivalence Nazis came out to defend their shed. And they're like, don't you know that micro four thirds is the same amount of light? So here's the deal. Some people say that the toniature is still doubled in full frame. You let in the same amount of light, but you only collect a quarter of much light, something like that. So I put it to the test, a Bob Ross test. Same exact settings on Sony A7S III. I had the 12mm Tony 2 on the Olympus, 25mm Tony 2 on the Batis. I conclude that micro four thirds is slightly brighter with the same settings. Therefore, we conclude micro four thirds superior in low light, collecting more light per square inch than any known system to date. I was just quoting DP Review. They said the 300mm Tony 4 lets in the equivalent of a Tony 8 full frame. And I was like, I assumed photographers knew what they were talking about. I will never make that same mistake again. Trusting a photographer? Never. So when it comes to low light, I did a little test side by side, same lenses as the first test, only we kept the settings as max ISO on the Olympus, so both are at 6400 ISO. I think that the Olympus will be cleaner. The shadow noise will be less. Let's see if that's right. Because Sony, like, you claim that you're the best low light, like, oh, amazing, but are you? Not really. Up to any of the usable ISOs, I find it's noisier than anything I've ever tried. But once you jump up to 12,800, then we see it. Okay, now you're actually exposed. We already outmaxed the Olympus. It's like, okay, welcome to full frame territory. We're in the dark, you're in a dungeon, your content sucks, but you're exposed somewhat adequately. Your face is uglier, you're reddish, disgusting, Sony colors, I'm sickened, but you're exposed, and I see the advantage. So if low light is your thing, like, yeah, full frame is going to be able to capture all the kids that have been hidden underneath Hollywood for so long and you want to rescue them, you bring a full frame camera, boom, you get some exposure down there in the dungeons. If, however, you're just out in daylight, let's take a peek, a little peek. So here we have Sony A7S III with a 100 to 400 G Master in 4K 120p on your left, versus the little Olympus 75 to 300 in just HD 120 frames. Am I seeing much of a difference? Like, especially after YouTube compresses it into a sandwich and chews it? The advantage, you can already see immediately that micro four thirds, it's easier to get the longer reach. Blame my lens, okay, it's only up to 400. This one goes like 800 equiv in slow-mo with the crop. It's even smaller than a micro four thirds sensor with that crop. Where's the advantage, man? I'm still seeing nice blurry backgrounds on the Olympus. It's like, man, what would propel you to spend thousands more to carry so much more weight? What are we getting for it? The full frame advantage in bright light. I don't see it. You want everything in focus in the bird's branches. You want the whole bird in focus. You never want a bird's eye and then the beak is out of focus. You're not art. Which brings me to my first point, tone obsession. I think we've been programmed with somebody infiltrated our mind with it. Because every movie I've ever seen and thought, man, that's so cinematic, almost everything has been in focus. Like, we're talking Tony 8 at least. It's like almost disgusting how lack of blur there is. Whereas on YouTube, for some reason, people are like, if you have more than 3 eyelashes in focus, you're not the cinema anymore. To me, it's irritating. I've seen many movies that went for that super blurry background, like it's only an eye in focus, super telephoto, everything's so tight and just bokeh balls down there. It doesn't look good. It's irritating. It's actually physically irritating to my nervous system and my stomach. I notice it when I use that Voigtlander 35mm Tony 1.2. It's like if you step back, like this type of shot, it's so magical looking. You see things in the background. It's not completely obliterated. It's just such a 3D pop look that it's like, wow, look at that. But when I move a little closer, and then it's like we're struggling to keep my eye in focus, and the background's obliterated, it's no longer good. Now here's a terrible shot of a hawk. I'm so far away from it, I panicked. I was like, oh wow, a hawk. And so I just filmed it from where I was, but we sneak closer and closer throughout this video. You wait to see how close I got. Olympus looks good enough. Like, could you print this movie? I have. I've done it. I've had a movie on my wall. You trying to tell me I don't? Here's an interesting little test. I put the 2x digital teleconverter on in camera on the Olympus, and then I matched the Sony zoom-wise, so it's 300%. And here we have that footage. I'm thinking Olympus is better. You win nothing so far full frame. And just in case you're curious, the Olympus teleconverter in camera is better than digitally cropping after. So it does something and it is useful to use sometimes. And it's really handy. Like, it's not good. You could never sell the footage, but it's like, man, I wish I could get closer. It's one button tap, boom, record. Just so many times I forget it and I leave it on and I'm like, why does that look like absolute trash? Oh, it is on still. That's a bitch. I have one shot each of the hawk flying on the Olympus and then on the Sony a separate time. So we'll play those, but just I want to talk about image quality. In my opinion, it's not like full frame is better than micro four thirds. It comes down to the lens. And I am shocked to see this budget ghetto 75 to 300 actually be as sharp, if not sharper, than the Sony G Master, at least in my bullshit test. If I did a studio controlled shot, we'd probably see it better, but in the real world, you're out there filming, it's like the lens is most important, and micro four thirds has some of the best lenses ever. Like, I don't know why they're so sharp. Maybe it's easier to design it for a smaller sensor. And it's like they got the Leica lenses, Olympus lenses themselves are amazing, Panasonic, they try. So if you had perfect lighting, you have the Olympus OM1 versus the Sony A7R IV. But you have like a Viltrox lens on the Sony and the Olympus 1.2 Pro lens. Come on now. The Olympus is gonna look better. Better color for sure. Sharpness, detail, dynamic range, okay. Okay, you got me. You got me hard. But come on, how much do you need out there in the bright sunlight? Hardly any. I got a comment the other day when I posted that Fuji versus Olympus footage, and someone was like, see, this is why you get Fuji. See the Olympus, the highlights are completely blown out. It's disgusting. And I looked at the footage, I was like, what are you talking about? Like, you still see blue in the sky. It was slightly brighter, I think, but barely. Like, it wasn't blown out. Your mom's blown out. But when it comes to dynamic range, it's not all about full frame is definitely better than micro four thirds. Take the C70, for example. They have the DGO sensor. It has more dynamic range than the R5C. And the log profile matters so much. C-Log 2 in that camera, better than C-Log 3. Thanks for naming them backwards. 1 is the best, worst. 2 is the best, 3 is not as good. What the hell is... You're losers. So it's like if you had a micro four thirds sensor designed for dynamic range with this DGO digital gain online sensor, dual gain optimized sensor. Like, you might have something special, and then like Olympus log, newly designed highest dynamic range. Like, it's not always full frame, more dynamic range than micro. And you can throw this whole topic, this whole video, micro and aps-c. We're talking about crops versus the big boy, and then medium format, that's not even a thing. Don't even look. Here's some woodpecker footage. I changed the Sony to HD, so we got 240 frames versus 120. Now are you seeing much difference? Like, I bet ya the Olympus has stood up so far to the 4K 120. And if we punch in there, I think Olympus wins, even though I can't see the footage right now because it would make too much fan noise. That's fine. So I'll be honest with you, I prefer the Sony full frame in here versus the Olympus. That same equivalent, even though I showed you that Olympus is better in low light and it takes in more light, this looks better. Like, full frame in here, just throughout the whole video, you must have full frame. Don't even try to make a YouTube video without one. But most of the advantages are in Micro Four Thirds if you want to leave the house. We're lighter, cheaper, smaller, as good, longer reach is easier to get, because all their lenses, like 100 to 400 and 800 mil equiv, to get that on Sony, it doesn't exist. You could get that 200 to 600 with a teleconverter. Ouch. There's construction. I can't hear it. Can you? I don't hear anything. And usually Micro Four Thirds has more features. It's just weird, in the last year, full frame has somehow caught up. Little side rant on this. I don't physically understand it. How does the Z9 do 8K 60p in a full frame sensor? And now we have Olympus with a stacked, smaller sensor, 4 times as small, not even capable of doing above 4K, not RAW, max 240p, but not in 10-bit. That hurts. I don't know, man. What the hell happened? Full frame caught up hard with the stacked sensor, but now we have it and we can do nothing with it. That should be able to do 4K 240p on a micro loser. What's going on? But in general, like Panasonic with their 300 frames per second now, versus like a Canon R5 can only go up to 120 frames. In the real world, it's like Micro Four Thirds losers have more features. The Olympus has their live ND for bullshit photography, and like the pro capture mode where you don't have to have any skill to get a bird flying. It's like, wait, oh, there he flew, boom, I got all that. I'm so skilled. Will you buy my photos? I have an Instagram. Sign up. You don't have to sign anything. Just go to it down below. Look how close I got to that hawk. That's with the Olympus and the digital teleconverter. It looks like trash, but look, we got a hawk so close. Like, if you just do side by side with the Sony, that's as far as I could get. I mean, as close as I could get with the 100 to 400. I'm thinking of getting the teleconverter. Can someone tell me, is it worth getting the 2 times? I've seen the results. 1.4 is the reasonable one. You don't go to the 2, but I need the 2. That's 800. That will only match my Olympus in slow-mo. It's about 800. Why am I buying it? Here I'm trying to track a flying hawk in manual focus on both. So let's witness the glory of that. So, like, I bet you could get much better results with the full frame camera if you knew what you were doing. You got your tripod, everything set up. But Micro Four Thirds, it's so small, it makes it fun to bring with you no matter where you go. I can just clip it onto my backpack clip and it's just there. I can't even notice it. The Fuji is somewhat more noticeable. Full frame, like, forget it. How you gonna strap that thing? I just think for most people, like, you're just posting your content to YouTube, Micro Four Thirds, maybe. Fuji aps-c. I like the longer reach. How far can we get? Once you have a little bit, you need more. I want a 2000 mil lens. Something like that. Tony 18, I don't care. Just get me close. Atmospheric distortion is a myth. You don't even pretend you've ever seen waves of heat. That's a mirage. They don't exist. They've never shown up on film. It's fine. The further away, the better for everything. So last little comparison, Robins, side by side. Decent lighting, clear shot, probably my clearest shot. All those hawks were just like dread lighting, just pure clouds of darkness. But yeah, I'm not seeing your advantage, son. Not seeing it. Oh, slightly blurred. Like, it's obliterated. The background obliterated on both. They look just as smooth as each other. Micro loser win. Now, I don't even want to crash the party here, but today I got the most majestic footage ever with the Fuji. So Fuji wins this whole discussion. I got close to a huck. I couldn't believe the footage I was getting. I cried at least 3 times. Fuji wins. I want the 100 to 400 with a 2x teleconverter. Throw out all the weight, I don't care, it's heavy, good. I'm glad it's heavy. Fuji, come back into my heart. Why did I sell you? I suck at everything. Oh, it hurts. Oh, the G9, I miss you. I miss the XT4. I miss a lot of things. The GH5S, that one hurts. I could have it as a studio cam. I miss everything I've ever sold. Is this good content? So what are your thoughts about this for wildlife or whatever you're shooting outside? Like, have you went full frame and you've noticed like this is so much better? I have to put up with the wait. It's that good. Like, what am I missing here? For wildlife, I'm not really seeing it so far. I suck at what I do. That's all we know for sure. This ain't enough reach. If I got that teleconverter, maybe we're getting some more magic. I mean, the most magical shot I've got so far was the owl with this, so potential is there. But man, teleconverters, there's like 700 plus tax. That's like a new lens. Could buy a whole lens for that. Usually what I hear is old men get sick of carrying this heavy ass camera. They go to Micro Four Thirds. They deal with the image quality loss because it's lighter and more fun. And that's like, who cares? They're just showing it to their wife. She's half blind anyway. She doesn't see the thing. She just wants you to finish the porridge she made for you. Or do you see a sharpness increase? Because sharpness for wildlife is a good thing. Sharpness for the human face, not so much. You don't want that, but for like digital sharpening out there, like, yeah, show me all the details of the feathers and everything. So my rant is complete. Micro Four Thirds wins. That was an expensive mistake. I'm not putting the lens back. I threw it. You heard the crash. Thank you for buying a Camera Conspiracies t-shirt and whatever I talked about through my affiliate links. I have an Amazon shop with everything I use. Go check it out and buy everything in it. After you subscribe. Subscribe to Bob Ross too. Does it eye track Bob Ross? There's no eye. Oh, yep, it's doing it. Oh, Sony, do you choose? So you prefer Bob Ross. That's a bitch. That's a bitch. He was pretty charming. I should have used that face register feature. It would have decided I was the better one. It switched to me, bitch.